Right, cool. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Russ. We're here to chat about a couple of things around the sharding keys and the categorization. Um, should we quickly talk about the sharding keys, the due date for the sharding keys first? Um,
Yeah, I just updated the other agenda for the stand-up with some discussions we've had in the past. I'm not sure why we needed this and how important it is, but
you know, Alex?
Are you talking about the due dates for the teams to have their sharding keys completed?
yeah.
No, I wasn't across the details. CC would talk to me about these things kind of at a higher level. I'd be asked for confirmation every so often whether I thought dates were achievable. Like I mentioned in Slack, I think there's a difference between the expected ETA than what we're also asking from teams.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
my
a.
understanding was, yeah, sorry, Alex.
I mean, I guess just to highlight that there is a difference between the sharding keys with an organization ID column versus the others. So the organization ID columns are more important.
Yep, that was my understanding that we need this done because some other work depends on them, but I'm not sure what. But somehow that at some point that changed that we need all them done by November, which I think was like pretty clear it's not gonna happen. So for the organization idea, I'll go through the issues and I'll post another update. We should be very close, if not done, because last time I was looking at it, there was significant progress. But for the rest of the tables, yeah, like we talked in the previous meeting, there are like 70 something tables that are not done yet. Some maybe not even started.
Okay. Maybe something to take up with Nick then.
Mm.
It's the new due date. Okay, let's move on to the next one. If you all don't have anything else.
Just like I mentioned in Slack, I just back of the envelope type calculation based on the progress graph. A realistic ETA looks like May 2025, just going on the curve of the graph. And my concern is that the easy ones get done first, and then the harder ones get pushed back and deferred. And maybe there's like like an 80-20 issue here where the first 80% are quite easier than the last 20% take forever. So the progress is strangely linear in that graph, but I don't know if that may be a bit optimistic if you just take it very naively as a steady, realistic graph for the moment for progress. Maybe it's not realistic going towards the end of trying to get all these cleared up. Maybe there's more complexity hidden.
Okay. Yeah. I think we need a date because we need the teams to keep working on it. So yeah, I'll find out more from someone.
Yeah, but by the way I found, like you can see from one of those discussion links I posted, the way I found that November is for all sharding keys is because some team was telling me in the review that they need to meet that deadline. So somehow that was communicated to teams and they like were aware that at least trying to achieve it, but is it all teams? So yeah, I don't know. Which is good because at least they've been like making progress, I hope.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a challenge there when working with other teams, trying to get them to work on things that we need them to work on, where unless we set those due dates,
Yeah.
maybe the work doesn't actually happen. But we've also just completed phase 2, right? And so these sharding keys, I believe, are not actually required until phase 7.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's always the way with estimations and project estimations and scheduling and so on, right? It's always longer than we think it will be, and um, I'm not across the details, but it does seem like it might be worth, given the overall roadmap that we've only just finished phase 2, that maybe we could reassess dates.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Is this who is going to make that reassessment?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I don't know how the new structure is going to work, and you know, everything's kind of in the air at the moment, as far as I can see. So yeah, good question.
Okay. Yeah, I would consider someone from group organization to step up for that one. Of course, Nick and I can always give you a hand as well.
Uh, for what, determining timelines for the
Yeah,
sharding work?
how many timelines and communicating with teams about what's next. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't mind doing that, getting involved. I can see how it's certainly an organization responsibility. Um, I'm not across, like I say, the broader planning. So if we're going to come up with dates, I think it needs to fall in line with the broader planning. So where is that happening?
Yeah, so that's happening on the sales stand-up. But I think what I think I need is a new set of dates that you think that the team should hit. And which set, like maybe organization ID columns or something else. And then that date becomes a date that we can communicate to other teams saying, oh, hey, we need this sharding keyword completed by this, because of why. And then we can start the ball rolling again, right? If it's not already rolling.
Great. Yeah, I'll go over the organization ID columns and post an update somewhere. So at least we know where we are with this ones.
So it's not ETA, it's when the organization team needs the sharding key to be done by. We
Yes.
don't have the ETA. But yeah. Okay. I want to I'm conscious of time, so I want to move on to the next one, which will affect this one as well. So for that issue of categorization, I have added some proposed criteria to the issue. Sorry for the late notice, but yeah, have a quick read and see what you think.
I think, Kraz, maybe you had the same query as me. In terms of criteria, is there anything more definitive that we could, you know, if these things are valid, then this is the expected schema? because that's what we want, right? That's what you're proposing. Yeah, that we have some kind of like automated process that can give us some system around this. Whether it's 100% or not is another question. But I think, is that what you're asking on this issue?
Yeah. Yeah. So detection is one thing. Which schema it lands on is another thing. There's actually three options to do it. One is to decide that, hey, this is actually a cell table and then it's a sharding key. So that's one. That's one outcome. The other outcome is that this is really a cluster-wide table and therefore it needs to be synced to all tables. That's the second outcome. And then the third very ambiguous option is that it's a cluster-wide table, but we don't need to sync it to all tables in cells 1.0. That part, I think, it's kind of confusing to everyone. So ideally, we have some sort of attribute or make a new schema so that that is not confusing to people. So a good example is the users table. It is a cluster-wide table, but it doesn't need to be synced to all tables in
All
cells
cells.
for cells 1.0, because we're creating a new user in a new cell, and the user is effectively confined to only one organization, right? So there is no need to sync the users table at all. So how do you distinguish that very clearly to another table like the plans table? I don't know. Perhaps we could have a new schema called GitLab main user to very clearly distinguish between the cluster-wide tables that needs to be synced to all cells versus tables like user. That's one option. Another option is to have another attribute that says sync to all cells.
So I think there's quite a few things mixed into the same issue, and they are related but could be tackled separately. I think the thread that for me seemed like the initial priority was just detecting miscategorizations so that we could kind of clear up that organization isolation sharding work stream, where we've taken a first pass at the moment and teams have looked at tables and they've categorized, but maybe some were just wrong. Maybe some teams misunderstood what was going on and they're wrong. So I thought that we would maybe be able to devise some set of rules around catching obvious mistakes. And then what you're talking about in terms of syncing, that seems like a second kind of set of problems. So maybe we should kind of tackle, first of all, put them into separate issues and then tackle them one at a time.
Sure. I mean, like, I've deliberately left that issue to be just around detecting. What we do with miscategorization can be another issue. But if you want to further split the detection into smaller issues, I'm fine with it as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at the proposed criteria. I think 3 out of 4, which means all excluding the write activity, we can write tests and like automate this, because we have the foreign keys views in the database and we have we can start with, like, if it's cluster-wide table, make sure it's not referencing any cell table and the other way around, and make sure it's not medium or large table, because we now have that in the dictionary too. So those 3 could be implemented as tests, and then we'll find out how many violations we currently have and go from there. The write activity is trickier because that's a different data source. We have to look at this in Prometheus, but it should be a simple query once we have all the table names to just make a chart with their rights, so we can see like where we are. It just can't be implemented as like part of CI. I think should be manual review. So I guess I can take those three and write a test for them for cross-reference and stable size.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
Is this? It seems like it is detection to a degree, but there's also just general analysis that maybe we haven't really looked at this properly yet. That architecturally, like from a logical perspective, data relation perspective, this is how the data falls out, and these are the tables that are cluster wide. These are the ones that cell local, but maybe in terms of this criteria that you've got listed, that maybe some tables are just so big that like there's a conflict here that it's not a miscategorization. It's just like it's a problem that we have to deal with.
Actually, Tom, what do you mean by the last ones? The references from cell table to cluster Y table must be checked to see if there is split-brained or not. I mean, like we can detect such references, but I guess we'll have many calls, many tables, for example, are referencing users.
Yeah.
Exactly. So do we just need a list for this or what? Because if it's just a test that's failing, then yeah, it will be failing for sure. And what do you mean by the split brain part?
So I think we can, as you say, we can do a test for the foreign key, right? And then detect it. And then a human would definitely need to check that whether that makes sense or not. And if they think it makes sense,
Yeah, but what do you mean by it makes sense? Like, is it needed or?
add it to a allow list or something. So for example, there is like a foreign key between users table and issues, right? That's one. Will it result in a split brain? No, because when you create a reference to a user ID, the users are all unique. There is no chance for a split brain. The opposite case is when you create a new GitLab subscription and you have a foreign key to a plan ID. So that's also another FK, right? And if you look at it, you can see that in two different cells, there is no guarantee that the plan ID refers to the same thing constantly. So the application actually expects, say, plan ID 7 to be ultimate plan or something like that. Versus another cell, there is no guarantee that the ultimate plan will be plan ID 7. That's what I mean by split brain.
I think we had a similar case with work item types or something, where the basic ones, there was work done to make sure they always have like the constant IDs. But I don't know if that's, yeah, because the plans are usually looked up by a key name, but then the foreign keys are using the ID. Okay, I see what you mean now. Well, yeah, that definitely should be someone looking at them. So we can automate just like generating the list, but then that will be quite a lot, I guess. Probably most of them will be fine, but you still need to go through them, and like most of them will be the issues users case you first described, but you still need to like go through them and check them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But this is like this question is not so much the GitLab schema. It's kind of a subset of that problem, right? Like maybe they're marked as cell, but they need to be cluster wide. But then we need to distinguish between on a cluster wide level, like those kind of reference type columns, tables versus others. So like there's more than just the schema. The schema is a bit too broad. We need to understand within that level. Because it's not enough, right? It's not enough if we have, like you've said, references from cell table to a cluster wide table must be checked to see if there's a split brain or not. Okay, so do we add some field to the database document to say that this table is something like, we create a new category and we say, well, it's in the cluster wide schema, but it is this kind of table. It is like a split brain vulnerable table, or whatever name you want to give it. Is that like the outcome of this process?
No, like I said in the beginning, the outcome in a process can be one of three options. One is that it shouldn't be a cluster-wide table. It needs to be become a cell table, and therefore we need to add a sharding key to it. So that's one way of dealing with it. Another way of dealing with it is that we decide like it's a user's table, so it should be safe to just ignore it for cells 1.0, do nothing. By the way, there is a linked issue that I linked to suggest a whole new schema called GitLab main user, so that maybe that's an easier way to manage this, because there are about 40 tables. So that's another option. And then the third option is that, it is really a GitLab main. It is really a cluster-wide table, and it needs to be the same rows in all cells.
Yeah, I understand, but like in your list of three things, two of them are potentially cluster wide, and
yes.
So in terms of like, is it a matter of vetting all the tables? So we have, let's say you have an issue and you've listed all the tables and there's just a checkbox and you ticked off all of them. Okay, we've confirmed they're all correct. Like, is that enough? Or do we need to say, this is what we've determined? It's in like a database document or something, and then the YAML files, that is. So that then we've captured that information on the table.
No, I would imagine you will open new issues to address those problem tables that you detected.
Because I think it might be worth thinking through, at least initially, because the rules kind of change between 1.0 and 1.5, right? How the reference tables are always reference tables, but like you say, the organization, the user tables are, we don't really have a plan for 1.5. So 1.0, we kind of just, everything's so local effectively, but they're not really so local. They're considered cluster wide because we know we have to deal with them at some point.
What was your question? Sorry, I don't.
Or is it? The categorization concept is, I wonder if it changes between 1.0 and 1.5, whether the rules change between 1.0 and 1.5. So what we consider the category in 1.0, does it change for 1.5?
I think I am proposing that we change it slightly right now. That's essentially what I'm proposing. So the background story to this is that we do not want 80 cluster-wide tables. It's unmanageable. and it's not immediately clear whether the cluster-wide tables means that it needs to be synced or not. So that's the background of it. And then there's a side effect is that if we decide that this table is better off not being a cluster-wide table, it needs to be a cell table. Therefore, the sharding key new work needs to start now, right? Because that's like a mandatory stops, and it takes multiple milestones to start sharding keys. So that's the background to that story, if you will.
But so you're coming from kind of like this infrastructure level where the motivation for the categorization of a table is driven by the number of rows or the amount of IO on that table. But there's also another facet, which is, I think, where we've categorized currently, where it's based on just the data relationships, whether it makes sense to be from from like a data modeling perspective, whether it makes sense to be cell local or cluster wide. So I kind of can't reconcile the two of them there. Like they seem like two different things.
It's both. It is both. It is both. So I don't. What
like it
conflict do you see?
if from the data modeling perspective, we think something is cluster wide, we've made that decision because it's essentially shared data. And then if you say, well, it can't be cluster wide because the IO is too big or the table's too big, well, just making it cell local, what does that mean? What is the implication of that?
I think you're several steps ahead, firstly, because this issue is about detecting based on the data modeling and also the right activity. What we do with it, we really have to open an issue and figure it out. And Cross hasn't really agreed to take on the right activity yet, which I agree. It might be difficult to look at. Yeah. So I can't really answer your question because it's quite hypothetical right now. But we definitely do look at the data modeling.
Oh, I say let's start with, I don't know, trying to build a list based on those criteria and go from there, like how many we have. Yeah, we'll definitely have to make a decision and like answer these questions, but doesn't seem like we can do it now. So
I'll ask something else as well. I'll ask that you look at the criteria and also and see whether I'm missing anything or I'm adding too much.
okay, I'll think about it when I'm fetching the data. Yeah. It's a bit unclear to figure out what's a problem and what's not, given we have no idea how the syncing is going to happen and like how it's going to cope with updates at the same time, and we would even be able to cope with that.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah, exactly. So if we end up, that's why I do not want 80 tables to have to synchronize. Yeah, it'll be high likelihood that we can't create a syncing process that is performant enough. So, but the good news is that it is very likely that 40 of those 80 tables we do not need to like sync because they are users. So by definition, we do not need to sync it. So yeah.
we don't need to sync them now, but eventually we have to.
Yeah, eventually we have to sync them, yeah, at some point in cells 1.5.
Yeah. Once we start like having users crossing between cells, then we'll have to.
Yeah, we have to find a way to sync those. Yeah. Should be another challenge.
Okay.
which is why I think it's worth recording this on the table somewhere, or having something somewhere defined. Like if we're going to go through the effort of categorizing each table, it'd be worth recording that on the table document itself, so that we know that in cells 1.5 we know it is a users table, for example, and even though we've categorized it as cell local for 1.0, it's going to have to change for 1.5 potentially.
No. I wouldn't categorize the users table as cell local. I'll either keep it as cluster wide with a special thing that says users, or categorize it as GitLab main users. I wouldn't switch it to cell because it's not a cell-based data.
I didn't mean users specifically. I meant like the user-related tables. So something like a user details table,
yes,
which is a one-to-one mapping for a user.
Yes, exactly. So my idea for that, if we decide those things, those are indeed user tables, is to create a new schema called GitLab main user, and then mark all those user-related tables as GitLab main user. So that way we do record it in the database dictionary that, those are user-related tables. And it will be synced later in 1.5 when we come to it. Yeah, definitely, I agree. We definitely have to mark it.
I don't know how I feel about overloading the GitLab schema one more time with another million. But yeah, we can just like have a tags attribute and tag those tables. Like there are many ways to do it once we decide how to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Or have a tag that says sync in cells 1.5.
Yeah, or scope to users or something that can, okay. Okay, I'll try to build a list with all those cluster-wide tables and like identify how they like, do they meet or fail those proposed criteria? And while doing this, think about, are we missing or having too many of these criteria? Can ping you, I guess, sometime beginning of next week, see where we are. I guess we'll post it on the issue and we'll go from there. Okay.
Oh, we're at time. Thank you very much for robust discussion. I'll post this online. Thanks. Have a good day.
Thanks. Yeah.